Imagine calling someone a snobby commie and then sounding this stupid. The current far-right populist movement in the US is really good at creating their own universe and staying in their own reality. And when Ben Shapiro and Charlie Kirk debate random audience members, they're really picking at low-hanging fruit, trying to own the microphone, make mic drop moments and whatever. This girl is asking a very valid question about the Electoral College, so we're going to go through and debunk it.
Hello. So
Debunk
from
Charlie.
your talk, I gathered that a big problem you have is the government representing the will of the people, and you believe it should do a better job at that, correct? If you say that, how can you support Donald Trump when he has lost the popular vote twice?
Okay. Because we don't elect presidents using the popular vote.
What a bad mic drop moment, dude. That's so weak.
Yes, but you said you have an issue with the government not representing the will of the people. So if you personally have an issue with that, then why do you support him if that is not the will of the people?
Right. So will and majority are two different things. Right? So are we a democracy? You're not here. Are we a democracy?
Should we be?
No, but are we?
Why should we not be? Is that not a core fundamental point of American society?
No. Has democracy appeared anywhere in the Constitution?
I mean, that is genuinely a valid point. However, your point of the government should represent the people, why is it that democracy is not in the Constitution, or why is it that you believe that the will of the majority is not as important as the will of the minority if your issue specifically is the government should represent the people better?
Good question. So we believe in the Electoral College. Why? Because Kansas deserves a voice. Because Missouri deserves a voice. And it's the most important way I could distill it is...
Actually, it was a compromise solution between those who wanted states' rights and those who wanted to be a fully national, centralized system. So we said we'll give the same number of senators to every state. If you have 5 people in your state, you get 2 senators. If you have 500 million people in your state, you get 2 senators.
The union we have is the states created it, the federal government didn't create it. So the kind of price of admission is every state gets 2 senators, congressmen based on population, and then electoral votes based on that population. So you kind of get a mix of both. And it's also this tension. And I would ask the question, if we abolished the Electoral College, do you think that the needs, wants, and interests of Missouri, Kansas, Iowa, North, South Dakota, Montana would be taken as seriously as New York and California? That would be my question.
So this guy has been doing political commentary for a long time. Him even making this argument is extremely just dumb and disappointing. Right now, if you win Pennsylvania in this election, you have like a 90% chance to win the Electoral College. This system right now means they don't go campaign in Montana. They don't go campaign in California. You don't campaign in any state that's not deep or that's not a swing state. Right now, all money is being spent on swing states that can move. But New York, for example, has a huge rural population. So does California. There's a lot of California that's red, that's not listened to, that never gets politicians to campaign to them. There's a large population of cities in Alabama and South Carolina that are more Democratic that don't get any campaigns there to have any rallies or anything or events, and no money spent in these states because of the Electoral College. So right now, as a result of the Electoral College, there's only a campaign really in one state. Pennsylvania is almost the only state that matters this election.
Do you believe that some citizens are more valuable than others? Because in our current system, some people's votes hold more sway than others because people in like...
Charlie does believe this. Number one, because Charlie believes in power hierarchies. He is a very far right, you might say fascist individual. So he does believe certain votes matter more than others. And a lot of people do. But that doesn't mean the Electoral College is a good solution to anything.
Wyoming, who have smaller populations, have more say than places like here in Missouri and Kansas. Why is this acceptable if it's, again, your issue is the will of the people? Because
we're not a democracy. So democracy is simple majoritarianism.
The way he says that, dude, is so...
So democracy is simple...
If it's, again, your issue is the will of the people.
Every mic drop moment.
We're not a democracy. So democracy is simple majoritarianism. So let me give you an example. In democracy, by up or down vote, you could say, I want to enslave black people. A constitutional republic says, no, you're going to have to go through a process to do that. So let me ask you a question. Do you think the majority, the will of the people...
You can have a more democratic system with processes enabled. The Electoral College is the worst electoral system in the world. You can literally change it and have it be proportional. So the electoral votes are split by the state's proportion, like what happens in the primaries. You can make that change. So in the Democratic primary, if a state has 10 votes, if you get 60% of the vote, you get 6 of those delegates. Right now, if you win a state by 1 vote, you can win a state by 1 vote and get all the electoral votes. You can fix this system. There's not just direct democracy and then the worst thing in the world, the Electoral College. There are middle grounds here, but Charlie Kirk does not care about that.
Yes.
Okay. So the founding fathers knew it could almost assuredly be wrong, right? So the system of a republic versus a democracy is it has to be slow and arduous and intentional because it has a preference on liberty, right, not on free stuff. And so over a period of time, how do you best protect liberty? Well, you got to spread over all the representation over space and time. Right? So you do it over a lot of states, a lot of square miles, a lot of acreage, and it takes a lot of time to take over the federal government, right? You have to win an election, and then an election, and election. It's not impossible. We eradicated slavery. We gave women the right to vote. So it's
Donald Trump is the biggest abuser of executive power to shape the federal government the way he wants of any person in history, in American history. He has used more executive power as president than anyone else did, almost. It's hilarious that Charlie Kirk's making this point.
Possible to get change done. But the founding fathers were less concerned about getting progress done really quickly, and they were more concerned with the government doing bad stuff too quickly. Does that make sense?
But that is
how does the Electoral College have anything to do with direct democracy and like direct policy voting? Direct democracy making a country change too quick. That's not what she's asking at all. The Electoral College is stupid. I don't care if you want a super authoritarian republic. The Electoral College is
not
terrible.
What you said. You said that your specific problem is the government does not do the will of the people. Why is it that your will and what you want is more important than that of the majority?
Well, it's not my will. It's the framers and the system we have. But to answer your question, I believe the best way to determine the will of the people is through states' rights and states' directives. If Kansas wants to say, hey, we can have decentralized gun laws or school choice, God bless Kansas. And so the question is not, it's national will.
You know what? If we had no federal government and no like Department of Education, every red state in America, their education standards would collapse, like even more than they already are, because red states in America already have the lowest education standards, lowest education outcomes, lowest life expectancies, lowest levels of happiness. Without the federal government to prop up a lot of red states' systems, they would fall apart. The blue states would be fine, especially because like California and New York are some of the big economic producers, so they'll be fine. But the red states would fall off a cliff without the federal government keeping a centralized system, or at least the centralized foundation intact in America for all states to, to slightly follow.
Also versus state will, right? So we have to recognize that the values of someone in Manhattan, Kansas, is a lot different than the values of someone in Manhattan, New York.
The values of someone in Philadelphia is vastly different from someone 2 hours away from Philadelphia. That's not how we decide national policy.
A lot different. And so through a democracy, it'd say, hey, the people of New York City want to have firearms confiscated. I don't think that dog's going to hunt in Manhattan, Kansas. Well, Kansas State University.
We still have a Congress that votes on all these laws. We still have a Congress that does this. Like, I don't know why I know why he's making dumb points.
So I don't know, but it allows, answer your question, it allows people that disagree with one another to live in the same nation. You see, a Republican-style government, small r, allows people that might agree on almost nothing to still engage in self-government.
No, it allows someone, we're talking about the federal government, how the federal government chooses our executive, our singular executive person, the president. We're talking about that. We're not talking about states' rights. And when we have a federal government choosing an executive, the president, based off of votes that are leaned 7 million votes in another direction. So this is if Biden would have lost, because he almost lost by only a couple votes in certain swing states. But Hillary, for example, if Trump loses by 4 million actual votes, he doesn't have a mandate to lead. We're talking about the federal government. But Charlie Kirk wants to go back to no federal government. He wants the U.S. to fall apart and collapse completely and have no semblance of an actual modern country. So I know he doesn't care.
Still having a national project to participate in. So to clarify it even more, it is a question of the consent to the governed. If it was just a democracy, it would be an up or down vote on every single person, and that's it. The founding fathers saw that fail time and time again. Athenian democracy, people just vote themselves stuff. So they said we have to have some sort of system that realizes that if men were angels, government would not be necessary, but men are not angels, so we got to create some sort of government. Federalist 51, as Madison said. So we got to figure this out. So government is necessary, but we don't want to have too big a government, and people are just going to vote themselves stuff all the time. So how do we do that? Well, local is better than national. We got to have some sort of a national influence, and so they created the great balance between Jeffersonian and Hamiltonian type philosophy, as we know, as the U.S. Constitution. And the one thing they all agreed on, though, is human nature. They knew.
Man, they love saying a bunch of like Hamilton quotes while making no points. It's actually insane, dude. It's like you took a history lesson in an inverse universe where we're like basing our current policy off of what happened 300 years ago.
As we know, is the U.S. Constitution. And the one thing they all agreed on, though, is human nature. They knew that absolute power corrupts absolutely and that people were likely to abuse it. So I would just kind of counter by saying the will of the people can be best expressed through.
And Charlie Kirk is supporting Donald Trump, who wants to have the most solo, independent executive power of any president in American history. Like, that's what Project 2025 is. That's what Trump wants to do. He wants to get the entire executive branch to work, all the federal workers to all work for Trump, so he has nothing that can hold him back, no checks or balances, not even within the federal government system in general, no federal courts. Donald Trump's main position right now is making sure he can be dictator. And Charlie Kirk is like talking about this historical stuff about men being corrupted by power when you literally have someone that he is a huge, I mean, everything they do is rooted in hypocrisy. The attacks they're making of Kamala's campaign, I saw him say that Kamala's campaign is like a reality TV show and they don't focus on policies and it's all a marketing campaign. And that's literally Donald Trump. So anything they criticize about someone else, they probably want to do. The Charlie Kirk types. And this girl's asking good questions. He's not responding. He's doing this weird 4chan speech about like why we should go back 400 years in the past or whatever. But
through a multi-state project. For example, I believe a election is much healthier and much more representative by requiring candidates to go to Iowa, Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and not just spending time on the coast. Because you know why? It might seem as if, oh, we don't need those flyovers.
They don't need to go to Iowa. They do not currently need to go to Iowa. We can change the system in a way where they actually do need to go to Iowa. We can do that. That is a possibility, but we don't.
States, we don't need them. First of all, that's arrogant, prideful, and wrong. How exactly are you going to feed your family, and where do you think the breadbasket of the world comes from? The founders saw ahead, and final thing I'll say is this, is that it was Hamilton or it was Madison that said, we cannot have
I don't care about your Hamilton
tyranny
quote.
of the cities over the farmers.
There you go. There's the point. We don't want the tyranny of the cities, a.k.a. non-white people, over the farmers, a.k.a. White people. That's what he's basically saying right here. That's the dog whistle.
And that's built into our system. Thank you for being here tonight.
And that's why he's getting applause right now. He's getting everybody clapping.
I got to get
Amazing.
Be more important than others.
No, I don't. In fact, if you want, first of all, the way you do senators is egalitarian. The way you do Congress people is represent.
Senators is not How is that egalitarian? That's still on the whole states' rights thing. It's really frustrating listening to someone talk, and this is what we have to deal with because this is everything right now. But literally a walk in contradiction, direct contradiction. Everything he's saying right now, he doesn't believe.
Representative population. And let me just reinforce this, which again, California still has more electoral votes than Kansas. So there is a precedent, there is a weight on population. It's just don't.
And no one goes to either state. Okay, I can't watch this anymore. I can't. No one goes to either state for a reason, buddy, because of the Electoral College. Thanks for not responding to the question.